Hi, my name is Christine Freeman. I am a new member of PMI Rochester, although not new to project management, and I have been blessed with this opportunity to interview past presidents and our current president of PMI Rochester to celebrate our 35th anniversary. So I introduce everybody to Lori Gayshock, who is our current president for PMI Rochester. And Lori, I believe, oh no, my computer, sorry about that. Lori, I believe that you had mentioned that you started your actual presidency, the presidency term started for you back in September of 2018, and you're currently the president now. One of the things, just to set structure, and what I think is really interesting is I want to get into your journey about the presidency, but the very first thing is, one of the things I've learned on some of my other interviews is that the formal steps to presidency used to be a certain way, and they might have changed just a little bit. So there's now a president-elect type of time period, but prior to that, maybe what, 10 years ago, was it something different?
Actually, it wasn't 10 years ago. It was just a few years ago that changed, where it used to be that there was an executive vice president,
Okay.
and that didn't necessarily guarantee that role would become the president.
Gotcha.
And so that just recently changed in our bylaws in the year of 2017, I believe, when Michelle Venezia was the president. And we changed our bylaws so that if you are elected as president-elect, you are president-elect for a year term, and then that rolls directly into the presidency, which is a 2-year term. And that rolls into the past president role, which is a non-voting board role, but it is a role with a term for a year. So the total commitment as a president becomes 4 years.
Wow.
And that is currently in our bylaws.
Okay. And what were some of the reasons behind that change?
I think a lot of it is, just making sure that we have consistency, because with people coming in and out in such short terms, 2 years or 1 year, there's a lot of disruption.
Yes.
And lack of consistency because, people have different approaches.
Mm-hmm.
So when you have somebody that is with the chapter for a 4-year, set of terms,
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of communication that tends to happen. People are not guessing, what was that bylaw and what was the history there, and how did we get here? And when you have somebody like, I've been on the board for almost 8 years now, so I've seen a lot. I've seen a lot of evolution, and we've got folks like Brian Gregory, who is currently our VP of governance, but he was president for a couple of terms in the past, from 2014 to 2016, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And he's been with the chapter for a long, long time, and served on many roles. So he holds a lot of history as well. So it's just great to have some people around that can fill in some of the history of what's going on as things continue to evolve and operate. Does that make sense?
It definitely makes sense, because that was one of the questions I think I've had on a prior call or interview was, how do you maintain that consistency throughout? And yes, everyone has different styles, but we know some of these programs, just from being project and program managers, last years. So how do you keep that flowing, and how do you keep that through line going on those projects and keep them moving forward without them petering out, between presidents, or somebody has a different agenda? And so how do you keep the organization running? So I love that.
Right.
Thank
well,
you.
You always want to leave room for change,
Right.
and evolution, right? But it also helps to have somebody there that can say, well, not saying that this always worked in the past, but this is how we've done things.
Right.
Just so you know why this decision got made and where we are today, so that we can make an informed decision for the future.
Continuous improvement.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. So what was your path? How did you get to the presidency?
Well, it's interesting. How did I get to the presidency is
What's your
kind of
journey?
the journey was interesting. So I was with Xerox for about 20 years when I left in 2012,
Okay.
and I became a contractor project manager at Excelis Blue Cross Blue Shield. And when I got there, there was just such a strong presence of PMI Rochester, PMI and PMI Rochester within their PMO. And I was really excited to be part of a functional PMO. Something that didn't evolve until later after I left Xerox. They now have a collective PMO
Mhm.
in IT, but before I left, they really didn't. There were staggered PMOs and groups of project managers all over the
Mhm.
organization. And so I really wanted to work with a company that had a collective PMO, and Excelis had that. So I was really excited to be a part of it. And when I got there, what I found within the culture is that people were really passionate about PMI and the waterfall methodology, as
Mhm.
well as involvement and engagement with PMI Rochester. So I got to know quite a few people that were on the board and volunteers in the volunteer team already. And of course, you know, they were going to recruit me. So at the time, I was really not very active in the local chapter, and so you know they began to kind of talk to me about involvement with the chapter and how I would be a perfect fit. And I was like, gee, I don't know if I have time for all this, and you know, but
Mhm.
I'm the type of person that once I commit to something, I'm all in.
Right.
And so one of the folks that was currently in a role that no longer exists anymore, but it was the um, vice president and secretary role, and
Okay.
it was definitely a board role at the time. But her term was ending, and she was succession planning, you know, and looking for somebody to take over her role, and she felt like I would be a perfect fit. So she talked to me about it quite a bit, and I asked her a lot of questions. You know, like
Yes.
what's the commitment? You know, what's it
Yes.
like? What do I have to do? You know, what are my responsibilities? Just all those things. And then,
Right.
you know, I started attending some board meetings just to get a feel for what things were like. And I think in those meetings, I just began to see, wow, I can really play a part here. I
Yeah.
can add value. I can bring something to the table to make things better. And
Mhm.
I got really excited about it. So I ran for the role, and I got it, and the rest is history, you know? So, you know, from there, once I served in that role for about a year, then I became the VP of governance after that. And that was a really rewarding role to be, you know, serving it as, you know, looking at the backbone and the bylaws and the processes that currently existed, and
Mhm.
policies and um, you know processes, and you know getting involved with global and the region administrators, and just learning more about how we're supposed to operate kind of as a business, you know, learning those business aspects of how the chapter needs to be run, and what are the rules and regulations, you know, what are the things that keep us on the rails
Right.
as a train moving, you know. So that was, I became very passionate about that and got to know our region administrators really well, and started to learn more about the global organization. And then we had a vacancy in the VP of Marketing and Communications role. The woman who was previously in that role had to leave for personal reasons. And so there was a vacancy there, and they needed somebody, you know, to step in there. And I was like, because I have a passion for graphic design and something that I went to school for, I was
Right.
like, okay, well, it looks like there's going to be another migration of, you know, role in my knowledge of this chapter. So I took on that role, and I was in that role for a couple of years. And the role that I was appointed to was the president-elect role, because there was nobody at the time that was interested or ready to take on the role.
Gotcha.
And so, yeah, like I wasn't, it's not non-traditional because it does happen. People are appointed to,
Yep.
these roles rather than going through an election.
Right.
But because of the time frame that we were working with, I needed to step into the president-elect role, and I was only in the role for 3 months before I rolled into the presidency.
Oh my
So it was kind of,
goodness.
yeah, it was quite the learning curve, and it was quite the journey. But that's how it all unfolded. It was like, oh my gosh, here we go. Fred, let me hang on tight because it's going to be the ride of my life.
I just interviewed Al Gubbiotti, one of our other past presidents, and he also shared a similar story in which he was president-elect or vice president for 3 months, and then all of a sudden was in the president's role. And he said he shared something similar. It was quite the learning curve, quite the journey.
It sure was. Yeah, because every role that you're in, you have a bit of a different focus. You're VP of governance and you're focused on bylaws and policies and process and
right.
things like that. And then, you're in marketing and communications, which is all outward. You're thinking about how to promote the chapter, how to promote events, how to communicate and make sure that members have visibility into what's going on. So a completely different focus. And then all of a sudden you're looking at all of it.
Yes.
It's all, all in your purview now. You have to look at everything. You got to look at outreach. You got to look at governance. You got to look at finance. It's everything all at once. So it was sort of like, wow, okay. But the great thing is, I had a very highly communicative relationship with Michelle, and there was a lot of visibility that I had into the other portfolios as well, because I also had very close relationships with other people on the board. So I was able to really learn a lot about what their role was about, even though I was not in their role.
Right.
So, yeah.
But that's fabulous that you were able to travel through some of those roles and really pick up. I mean, the VP of governance, the way you have explained it, I mean, you literally were learning the entire structure of the building and how that was sitting up. I cannot get rid of this error, I apologize. And how it was sitting up, it really kind of stood up not only the chapter, but then how the chapter feeds the region, how the region feeds global. And what an education. That is incredible.
It was, and I loved every minute of it. I learned so much in that role, backbone kind of stuff, that really prepared me for this role.